The biggest thing to understand is that permitting almost always takes longer than people anticipate. So if you go into it thinking it's going to be a quick process, you're probably going to run into some stress along the line.
Why should signage be planned early before other design decisions are locked in? Signage needs to be a part of the design conversation early, not treated as something you squeeze in at the end. The real issue isn't just construction coordination, it's giving enough time to evaluate the right materials, finishes, lighting, and placement in the context of the overall office or building. When those decisions are rushed late in the process, people tend to choose what's quickest instead of what works best. How do you create signage that feels consistent across different materials and continues to look cohesive over time? Consistency isn't just about matching a color once. Different materials reflect light differently, and even different batches of the same material can have the slightly different visual characteristics from one another. One of the biggest tells in a building is when you can clearly see the different eras when each sign group was purchased. We try to approach signage as one coordinated system so that the materials, finishes, and visual quality feel intentional together and age together instead of looking pieced in over time. What should clients understand about LA permitting and Title 24 before a project starts? The biggest thing to understand is that permitting almost always takes longer than people expect. Cities move slowly, and that pace usually has very little to do with how prepared or motivated you are on your end. If you go into the process assuming quick approvals, that's when stress starts to build, especially if you're working toward an opening date. It's much better to treat permitting as a real project timeline item from the beginning and plan around it, so that the city's pace isn't something that you're fighting. Why does signage require such a deliberate process from design through installation? Signs are deceptively complex because each one is a custom, site-specific, and tied to both design expectations and real-world install conditions. Most buyers understandably don't know exactly what to expect at the beginning. So if the process isn't meticulous, gaps can open up between what was imagined and what gets built. A deliberate process helps close those gaps through clear design development, material decisions, approvals, and execution, so the final result matches the expectation. Why is it important to think about signage as a complete system rather than a series of separate purchases? When signage is purchased piecemeal, each item may solve an immediate need, but the overall environment usually starts to feel fragmented. Materials shift, finishes don't quite match, proportions vary, and over time the building loses a cohesive visual standard. When signage is planned as a system, the decisions work together from the start, so the finished result feels intentional, consistent, and appropriate to the space as a whole.